My name's Miss Wood. I am a Year 6 teacher at Copthorne Primary School. So when we had the demo, it was really engaging that all the children could be accessing the tasks at once. They could all see the different question sets and work on the question sets online, so they could do the working out there and then, rather than necessarily having to juggle with paper and that kind of thing. The feedback was the main thing that got it for me, that actually these question sets have built-in feedback depending on what the children write as their answer. It tells them and gives them hints and tips of what they need to do. Our children are mainly from Pakistani heritage, so we've got a lot of English as an additional language children, although most of them come from kind of second generation, which means that they have got a bit more English at home than probably a few years ago. They struggle with technology. A lot of them don't have access to technology at home, which then means that they haven't necessarily got the skills to use it as well as others. They come in extremely low to Copthorne, so when they enter our nursery or our 2-year-old provision, they are well below national standards. By the time they leave our early years, then obviously Key Stage 1 and into the end of Year 6, they are normally above where they should be, so they are above national standard in for their age. I use learning by questions mainly in maths, which is a subject I teach every single day for my Year 6 children. It has a lot of questions on there which develop the reasoning, fluency, following the White Rose maths, which is similar to what we use and how we structure our lessons. It allows me to adapt their lessons. The children I teach in maths are some of the more able children, so I can skip some of the more straightforward questions if I want to and push them onto the reasoning and problem solving questions. I've also used learning by questions in spelling, grammar and punctuation. So again, practicing those types of questions that they need to use to cement and apply their knowledge in different contexts. I've also used it in science lessons as well, which is something that's really interesting, to have a set of questions which you don't always use necessarily in science, which can really see whether they've understood or grasped a topic. As a teacher, it's really, really useful to use learning by questions. Shows you exactly where all the children are in the classroom all at once, whereas you might normally get to the end of a lesson and look at the books or look at what they've been doing and you think, oh, that child just didn't get it and I didn't manage to get to them today. It shows you it straight away live on your screen or on an iPad, and that allows you to see straight away if they're not understanding something, if they've got stuck on a question, if they've had a few attempts at it. It will come up red straight away when they've got a question wrong. It will then turn yellow when they've had another attempt, and it will show the number of attempts they've had. So when it comes up on learning by questions that they might have struggled, I might leave them for a couple of attempts to see if the feedback helps them and whether they can figure it out for themselves. If I'm noticing that actually they are really struggling and they need a bit of a helping hand, I'll identify the children on my iPad that I would carry around, and I would go to that child and speak to them about what they're doing. And using normal questioning techniques and things that we might have looked at in the input of the lesson, I would go through strategies to adapt or how to answer that question. They might need a bit of a helping hand, so I would always first of all get them to tell me what they've done so far. I would get them to tell me what feedback they've had and what they've tried again if they have had another attempt, and then explain how to do it. Some children, obviously you might notice on some of the question sets that quite a few children are struggling on the same question. If I notice that, what I do is I will pause the lesson, or I will use the ad hoc feature which will send it out onto all of the different iPads, and they can then see a particular question. So if they were all stuck on question 12, I could bring that up, do a bit of a demo, explain how we would do that. I would question the children about what steps they might take and what strategies they've used, and then I would let them get on and carry on. The children absolutely love learning by questions. They are really excited when you have the iPads out, and I think that's something that all children get. You have the iPads out and it's going to be a fun lesson, and effectively it is just maths questions as you would have in a normal lesson, but they have that engagement straight away. When we're pausing the questions, or if I need to bring them back together, they get really frustrated. There'll be a sigh around the room because they just don't want to stop, so they're just really engage with what they're doing. In terms of the competitive element, on learning by questions, you can make it so that you don't display the names. With my class, that's what I would normally do. We've got a few children, although they're more able children, that just lack a bit of confidence. So if they saw that their name was up there, they would be a bit worried about what that might look like if they were struggling. However, there's other children around the room who would say, oh, miss, I'm number 5, I can see where I am. And I think in some ways they like that because they can compare themselves to where other children are around the room, although they might not necessarily know which child it is. Learning by questions to a teacher makes things so much easier. They have questions for pretty much everything you can think of, especially in terms of the maths curriculum. You could look at whatever lesson you were doing and they would be there. It's really useful with children that need lessons adapting slightly or where you need to differentiate. You can select slightly different question sets. So before I have used a couple of tasks running at the same time, which are the same tasks, so the same question sets, but I've adapted them slightly. So I might have one that starts off with more of the fluency questions with a few reasoning and problem solving, and I might have adapted the same task to start with a couple of fluency and moving quickly onto the reasoning and problem solving. So although the children might be accessing the same question sets, they're pushed on at different times. It's also really good for marking because the children are given instant feedback. You can save, so as a tracked class, you can see how they've progressed over time. So it saves the scores. It's not just that it's gone after the day, which obviously in terms of evidence and things is fantastic because you can see how they have improved over time. Obviously, if you use learning by questions in one of the lessons, you don't have to mark the books because it is all online, and it has given that instant feedback rather than obviously feedback that might be given by me marking their book, which they don't receive till the next day. Instant feedback always has the most impact. So personally, it gives you a lot more time to sort your things out and sort other lessons out because you've got those banks of questions there. You're not trying to search and hunt for, oh, I need this many reasoning questions, or I need to develop a question that's going to do this. They're all there for you, which saves so much time that at the click of a button, the question sets are there already developed. Or if you do want to get into a bit more of the nitty gritty, as I said before, you can simplify them or extend them. Year 6 normally has the SATs, which obviously needs a lot of preparing for, and the children need to be at a standard in which they can apply their learning, and also more importantly, to make them ready for secondary school. Learning by questions, due to the question sets and the level that the questions go up to, it really does deepen their understanding. So although it starts at a more straightforward level with the fluency questions, it very quickly does build up to the more deeper thinking questions. It's also got a really good feature that it pushes the children on. So if they have achieved a set of questions at around 70% completion, it will push them on to the next set of questions, which rather than as a teacher, you might go around and say, oh no, you've done enough of that, move on. It does that for you, and it automatically makes them go on to those harder things. The question sets are also really good because they are built in a way that it would flow over really nicely from year 6 into year 7 because the question sets look very similar. So if they were to use them again in secondary school, they would already have that knowledge. Some of the children in year 6, we have challenged them with the year 7 question sets, which they really enjoy and thrive at that challenge. And again, it just shows that they are able to apply their knowledge that we've used the year 6 question sets to the year 7 question sets as well. During lockdown, learning by questions was invaluable. We'd only just recently purchased the question sets and learning by questions as a programme just before lockdown, so it was perfect timing to run with it. It was invaluable because obviously we physically weren't with the children weren't with us to have us giving them that feedback, to have us saying, oh, you've not done this, but try this instead. And so after delivering live lessons, I could set learning by questions, and I could be either at home or in school working with sets of children, but all the children at home could also be accessing those questions as well. I could see exactly when they were doing them, how long they were spending, how many attempts, and I could then use our communication tool to speak to parents at home or to speak to children to give them that additional feedback if that was required. Some children obviously get really stressed or anxious about the fact that they might struggle more than other children in the class. So learning by questions allows you to address that without necessarily having to draw them into a small group, which you might have done previously. You can clearly identify the children that are struggling on the iPad and address them around the room. And I think learning by questions, because of the nature of it, you do end up visiting quite a lot of children around the room at different points. So it doesn't highlight the fact that some children might be struggling more than others. And the fact that their names are not shown or displayed on the screen, although they know who they are, it's not clear to everyone else that they might be the ones that are struggling. Learning by questions for me is something that saves time. It is something that gives the best feedback to the children. It has fantastic resources on there in terms of the sets that are already provided. You're not having to do the thinking behind, oh, well, I need a question that will do this to make them think about this. They're already there. So you can just pull on them and adapt them if you want to. I also really like the fact that you can display it as a whole class. You can bring it up on the screen and you can teach from it. So during lessons, sometimes I will screenshot or snip one of the questions and do something similar if I know that that's a question that they're going to struggle on, which again saves me time rather than having to make up those questions. It gives you the opportunity to push them further faster because that is there for you already. If we didn't have learning by questions, I think you would be trying to recreate something that you once had. So you would be ending up doing a million times more work because you would want what you did once have. You would want those question sets. You would want to be able to push the children on to question 15 to challenge them further, which as a teacher, you don't always have the time to think of and plan for all eventualities, whereas learning by questions is just there. If a teacher wasn't already using learning by questions, I would tell them that they need to try it, and I have done. And I've said, the free trials that are there that you can access to look at the questions. The question sets are free to view anyway, that you can see just how fantastic it is. And more importantly, the progress the children make with learning by questions is just phenomenal. Learning by questions is a tool which has really made things a lot easier. It's something that is what you want and what you always try to create yourself, but it's done for you already. So it saves you all the time, it gives you time back, and it helps you help the children to be even better.